Morning, guys. Hope you're all doing well. So we just launched the Rayjet Manager 11.3, and with 11.3 comes a whole range of new features, some of which we will cover today. Now, Rayjet has been a very stable platform for many years now, and we have not seen much development on the software side except recently when they decided to move over to a similar platform than what we use for the speedy range. For this, we have now recently launched the 11.3, which is now available for all Rayjet customers, including our Rayjet 50 and Rayjet 300 clientele. So a few things have changed. As you would have seen in the video played before I started here, the video showed the older Rayjet software, the Mini Manager 2.4, and we moved away from the printer driver completely and we moved to a different printer section completely. So have a look at the printer driver as we have it now. So you'll see when you go to print, it shows Rayjet Manager 11.3. Let's open the settings over there. And there you will see our current print driver for Rayjet Manager 11.3. So 11.3 brought along quite some exciting changes. We no longer have to worry about our page size in CorelDRAW, which was always a bit of a bummer on the Rayjet Mini Manager software. We can now set our size according to our graphic, or what I tend to do is I set my page size to my machine size. In the Rayjet 50, for instance, we're going to use 457 by 305, and then utilize minimize the job size, which is a function that has been with job control, the speedy range, for quite some time, but has recently been added to the Rayjet Manager range. Minimize the job size, just get rid of all the white space around your artwork and just send artwork size through without you having to change the size based on your graphic. Now, before I continue, you guys can use the Q&A section if you have any questions as I go along. And I would also appreciate if you just give a shout out with your company name and your name, just so that we know who is online, who is watching, and who might be interested going forward. All right. Continuing with the print driver, we have our material settings. Now, our material database has changed significantly. If we open the material database from here, you would notice that we have a whole range of colors that we can now access in comparison to the limited colors that we had on Rayjet Mini Manager. We also have the ability to change our frequency to our cut lines. This, of course, allowing us to do finer cuts on certain materials, also more smooth cuts on stuff like perspex and all the rest of that. Other things, of course, multiple passes for engraving and cutting. So notice that on this side over here. And then, of course, the Z offset, which has been a feature on our speedy range for very long, but we never had the ability to change a Z offset on the Rayjet software. This is very handy in the sense of engraving plastic laminates and wanting a smoother finish on your engraving. Or, for instance, with wood, if you want a darker contrast engraving, you would want to increase your offset, take the machine out of focus. Now with this, it's built into the software, which means we can do it all automatically. The machine will move out of focus, do the engraving, and bring it right back into focus for the cutting. Our engraving direction is now also set per material and per color. So for your materials, rubber, for instance, we don't want to engrave bottom up. We want to engrave rubber top down. So for that matter, it is already in the material database selected either bottom up or top down per material, per color that is set for engraving. So if I set my blue for engrave, I can also set that a different direction. This does help with your extraction, increase of your airflow, especially on plastic laminates, we want to engrave towards the extraction, move all the dust towards the back instead of having all the dust go lay flat on the material that we just engraved. So, right. Otherwise, in the print driver, we have the standard processes, standard stamp, which is very familiar to all the Rayjet customers. We do, however, added an extra one called cut job. Cut job is a vector-only application, so it ignores any raster data and just sends through your cut line. So it doesn't matter what other colors you have set for engrave or what other colors that you have specified in your artwork. If it's not a cut line, it will be ignored completely. The resolution, that's the same as on the previous one. We've got a whole range from 125 dpi to 1000 dpi, 1000 of course being the highest. Right, so Cutline is also a new feature that was added to the Rayjet software. This does not override the cut lines that you draw in or draw. It does, however, add a cut line based on your selection, either rectangular around your artwork, circular, or optimized cut line. This is mostly for the rubber stamp manufacturers where you just do the text plate and you let the software take care of the cut line for you. If you do have a cut line set in Corel Draw, of course, we don't want to set this to anything, we leave it on none. Half tone options on the bottom, similar to what you would have had on the Rayjet Mini Manager. We have color, of course, being the default if we have multiple colors to use. We also have black and white if we want to ignore all colors. And we also have what we knew on the Rayjet Manager as error diffusion. We have Stucky, Jarvis, and Floyd Steinberg, which does make photo engraving a bit easier on the selection over there. All right. On the bottom, enhanced geometries is a feature mostly used by the bigger machines. This calculates your vectors for circles and beziers a bit more in the sense of speed and acceleration and deacceleration. On the Rayjet 50, of course, we don't use that feature because the machine is much slower and, of course, a lot smaller. Inner geometry first, however, is a very useful feature that was added. This we saw on the Speedy range about a year and a half ago. Now, on default settings, your cut lines is ordered according to how you draw them in Corel Draw, in which case normally your inner cut lines gets done last and your outer cut lines gets done first. Now, the only way around that was to change your colors to your cut lines to different colors, or of course use your Corel Draw Object Manager to rearrange your cut lines. Now, if you use inner geometries first and your outline is a solid piece and your inner cut lines is then of course same color, the software will automatically choose the outer cut line to be done last and will make sure that all the smaller inner bits get done first. This is quite a handy feature, especially for keyrings and for your smaller items. Right, from there, when we're ready to send, we just click on the OK button, which they lay.rm for Rayjet Manager, and then we can just print. Currently, I don't want to send both pages, so I'm just going to go current page, and I'm going to click print. Once it's in the Rayjet software, which you will see like this over here, you have your drop queue on the right-hand side, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you never saw on the Rayjet Mini Manager 2.4 range. So from here we have our actual plate layout, the white space on the screen there. That would show us our current machine configuration based on size. We have on the right-hand side, as I mentioned, the queue. We've got some arrows on the bottom here that's currently grayed out because there's no connection to the machine yet. But that is to move our X and Y axis around on the Rayjet 50. For the other machines, Rayjet 300 and Rayjet 500, they do have a separate keypad on the machine itself, which takes care of that. So there's no need for the cursors. Then on the left-hand side, we've got a very handy feature. that's now been added to the Rayjet software. That is the job time estimation. So if I place a job on the plate, it will give me an estimate time based on my current selection of material settings. So depending on what material I've selected, whether it be my paper or any other material for that matter, it would change my settings my time estimation based on that setting. It will show me time estimation for both engraving and cut lines, and of course for how many other colors I have selected in my material settings. Now, before we continue, I'm just going to make a connection with the machine. This is also an added step on the Rayjet. Before, this process was done in the back end and you just saw connected on bottom. However, this gives us now the ability to actually see where the laser is. You will see on screen there, I've got a little crosshair. So I have constant two-way communication now with the Rayjet. I know exactly where my red pointer is. I can snap my jobs to that position. It will automatically jump towards, as soon as I get close, it will jump towards my marker and it will snap. I can, of course, snap to any side. I can also snap to center position. From here, we can open our material database, and we can also change our material settings over here, power, speed, and as well as I mentioned, the frequency. Now, when we wanted to change the material setting, we had to go back to Coral Draw, go through the print settings again, change my material settings, and then go to the manager to run the job again. In this case, there's no need for that anymore. If the job is here, you can literally change your material settings right here and there. Right, so other extra features that was not available in the previous versions of Rayjet Manager was, of course, the little WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, which can show us a little preview directly on plate. We can see if everything is in order the way that we want it. And of course, this gets disabled the moment I press play to run the job. But that's a good way to see our job in place and make sure that there's no cut lines being cut off or that there's certain characters missing from the engraving, etc. I can also double click on it to show a bigger preview of the job. And then, of course, stuff like markers. I have now the ability to add little markers to the job positions or to the laser position for that matter. So if I add a little marker, I can always come back. Doesn't matter if I move the laser or move my job. I can always come back to that position based on where I place the marker. That's handy if we quickly want to fix a problem in our artwork that was sent through to our material without having to waste the material and redo the whole job. Also, in the material database, except for being able to control our Z offset and our direction of engraving, in the advanced tab, we also have something called high quality that enables better power distribution for your laser, especially on your highly sensitive materials, your plastic laminates and stuff, where you can see a difference between your left, right, and center of the engraving. With high quality, it forces the machine to travel from the outer boundary from the job to the other side of the outer boundary, in which case it will then switch on the laser a lot earlier than what it normally does, but only open the shutter when it reaches the point of engraving. You have a lot better power control on that side then. Also something called links, which was on our studio range for very long. Links is a feature where we can leave little bridges in the cutting, so the whole piece of cut doesn't fall apart, something like a puzzle or rubber stamps, that type of stuff, where you want to take out the whole sheet without having all the small pieces get lost, maybe for cleaning or otherwise, just to get all that out in one piece. Links, I'll show you where to enable setting. We go to options. And here we've got our process options. Under process options, we've got link. And over here, we can tell it to use links, what distance the links must be from each other, how big the link or the little bridge must be, and the power ratio that needs to be used for that bridge. Other options, of course, under accessories, we've got our rotary attachment option. This it's quite handy that they've added the rotational speed. Now, rotational speed does not affect the engraving speed on your rotary. It does, however, affect the speed at which the rotary turns between start of job and where it needs to start engraving. And of course, when it ends, when it moves back to the home position or whatever position you set it to move back to, that speed, however, is sometimes a bit fast, in which case it will cause material slippage, something like a wine bottle, for instance. Because it's heavy, when it moves at a high speed, it actually can slip and cause double engraving. So we normally keep this on 20%. Rotary homing, of course, that's default, where you can set it not to move before it starts or move to the start, to the 0 at the beginning and the end of the job or start position of the job. Right. We also have a function called standby, automatic standby, where the machine switches off the fans and unnecessary electronics after a certain time period. This is quite handy, but with the Rayjet 50 specifically, there's no way of bringing the machine out of standby unless you're sending a job. So for the Rayjet 50, we are a bit hesitant of using it. It's a nice feature, but the only way to bring a machine out of standby is then pressing the play or the go button here once you have a job in place. It does, however, take care of the noise the fans constantly make. So if you want to set up your machine and then continue with your artwork, this is a very handy feature. On our bigger machines, the Rayjet 300 and the Rayjet 500, this feature, however, is fine. And you do have the standby button on the control panel that can bring the machine out of standby. Right, so that would be for the automatic standby. Other functions in the software, of course, would be our job position, which we can control in millimeters on the top left here. That's, of course, if we don't want to snap it to the pointer or place it in a very particular place on the table. So we can use the job position over there. And then, of course, right next to it, the X, Y, and Z, that is the actual the machine position. At that point, this shows us exactly where this red crosshair, it shows us the laser pointer. This would be that values. So if we want to move finer jumps between, if we don't want to move it with the arrows, just note, guys, on the Rayjet 50, there is a bit of a delay when you start moving it with the arrows, but the average speed of moving is still the same. So if you do want it a bit finer movements, you can always enter the value over there and click on the move laser. It will, of course, give you a little warning. If you click yes, it will just move the laser to that particular point. The warning comes up because it is worried that we are moving on the Z-axis, and based on our length selection currently on the machine, we have a very limited field area, in which case if we do move it past that field area, we can cause an axis crash, which can cause some major damage on the machine itself. Right, so other features included in the software, of course, would be the ability to see our hours and distance on the machine. Now, this being our demo machine, you can see it doesn't work very much. You will see a completely different spectrum of hours and kilometers on your machine. It will also show us what firmware version is installed on all the boards, including your axis board and, of course, the main CPU board. Now, on the hours, we've got two, engraver hours and laser hours. The main difference there is laser hours being how long the tube actually fires for, engraver hours, how long the machine was standing on, just powered on, but not necessarily working. Right. We can also import your current material database from your Mini Manager 2.4. So for this, we would open the material database and just bring in the material file from the backup that we make before we install the software. Now, regarding installation of the software, we prefer to do this ourselves, as there is quite a few things that needs to be done, including the firmware of the machine that needs to be flashed. This being a bit more technical than what most customers are used to, but we don't have to do a call out or be on premises to do this. We can do all of this via the use of TeamViewer. All right, so for material database, you're not going to lose any of your settings. You would have, however, a lot more control over your settings in the sense of your frequencies, your passes for cutting and engraving, your Z-axis offset, and a few other functions that I have mentioned. All right. The cost for the upgrade for the license keys that we have to order from Austria, this is currently on special for 2,500 Rand, excluding that. We are, however, running the special only until the 15th of June, after which it will go back to the normal price of 3,500. This is, however, linked to a machine, so we do need the serial number of your machine if you are interested. So please give us a shout or just send us an email if you are interested. We can then either give you an official quote or order the license keys depending on your need. I have not seen any questions coming. Is there anyone that's got any questions so far? Doesn't look like it. All right, moving on. Just a quick run through on the other toolbars in the software. Of course, we can save our layout. So if we do have this layout as a jig setup, we can then save the layout from here. And of course, recall the layout at any time, keeping our positions current and accurate. We can also just repeat the cut line by right-clicking on the job, repeat cut line. This will ignore the engraving completely and just do the cut line again for us based on whatever cut setting we've got. So if we did the engraving, we're happy with the engraving, machine cut, but it didn't cut all the way through in certain areas, then we can just repeat the cut line. There is also outline job, which just shows the square around the artwork that we choose on the machine itself, just to make sure that we're not getting into areas where we can't engrave or cut. But we can also do duplication. However, on the Rayjet 50s, it will only place it in the queue. You cannot duplicate directly on plate. There can only be one job on the plate at any given time. We can also show a little preview on the bottom here. My screen is just a bit small currently, so I can't show you. But then the job preview will just show you a little preview on the right-hand side here of the job in queue. That's if you don't want to use it on plate using the WYSIWYG utility. All right, and then of course, other features, zoom can be used with your mouse buttons or of course with the zoom toolbar on the top over here. So we can go to plate or certain percentage of the zoom functionality over there. Lens selection, depending on the lens that you use with your machine. We, by default, use a 2-inch lens on the Rayjet 50s, but there is a 1.5-inch lens available for higher details. Paul, regarding your question regarding autofocus, you can still use the manual focus, and we actually recommend it. There's no change in the manual focus. Autofocus has been in the Rayjet software for very long. It is just safer to use manual focus, which we always recommend. So just on that note, yes, you can still use the manual focus and completely ignore the autofocus. You can also remove the autofocus toolbar if you don't want it. If you click on view, you'll see there's a list of all the toolbars currently enabled, and we can just disable the autofocus for making sure that we don't accidentally click autofocus. So you'll notice now here where the autofocus bar was, it's completely gone. Thanks for that question. All right, so moving on from that, we have our plate layouts. All the icons that you see in the menus over here does have shortcuts on the toolbars. If you hover the mouse over any one of them, you will actually see a short description of the tool itself. For instance, reset job. If a job has been ran already, same as in the old Rayjet Mini Manager 2.4, you won't be able to immediately start the job again, but you can either right-click job reset or just click on the job reset button on the top over there just to repeat the job. If, however, it's just a cut line, as I mentioned earlier, you can just right-click on it and click repeat cut line. From there, of course, settings. We've discussed the material settings. We also discussed our certain options that has been added in after the upgrade. There is also auto update, which is currently on my laptop disabled, but the software can auto update now from Trotec service. So within version upgrade 11.3 to 11.4, etc., those are normally free of charge. However, for major version upgrades, like what you are going to do now from 2.4 to 11.3, there is a charge involved, and that's for the license fees. So for those updates, it will not do the automatic updates. However, for all the minor updates, 11.3, 11.4, etc., in version upgrade, your updates will be automatic and it will be free. Same as in the previous version of Mini Manager, we can also create service files. Now, service files is not just a great troubleshooting tool for the technicians. It is also a good tool for backup. So the service file includes your material database, your log files, machine hours and kilometers that it used, as well as a whole range of other information, including your license fees, for instance. So it's a very good way to keep a backup of your current configuration while keeping your computer safe. We've had it in the past where computers got attacked by viruses, and first thing that the virus attacks is your material database or any data files for that matter. So this way it creates a password protected file. That file you can keep off the computer, maybe in the cloud, and of course have all that information. So in case your computer crashes, you can always recover from that. Or let me rather put it this way, we can help you recover from that. All right, so no, currently there is no annual license fee. I'm also not certain that they have planned for an annual license fee. This is so far for 11.3, this is a once-off license fee of 2,500 Rand. There was talks of annual, but they have not gone that route yet. So for now, this is 2.5 and it's once off. Thanks for that question, Andres. Right, so requirements on the software itself. We do require Windows 10 fully updated. Latest version, of course, 1903. I think it's the latest version available of Windows 10, preferably professional. It does work on the home versions, but it does limit us in certain extent. It does not work on Windows 7. Windows 7 also have stopped, Microsoft have stopped all support for Windows 7 in January. So there's no more security updates, which would indicate that our computer still running on Windows 7 is a high security risk in any business. The software is also geared more towards the newer generation of Microsoft operating systems, which means newer .NET frameworks and newer coding that's not supported on all the operating systems. for this reason, we need to move to Windows 10 at minimum. It is also slightly more resource intensive than the previous version of Mini Manager. So minimum requirements would be at least the i3 processor, 4 gigs of memory at minimum. I would suggest more if possible. And then of course, space-wise, that really doesn't matter, but it would help if there's a solid state drive in a computer to make the computer's performance a lot better. Right, if there's no more questions, this would be most of it for the new Rayjet 11.3 Manager. When we do the installation over TeamViewer for you, we will also, once installation is done, give you a walkthrough on the software, show you the new features on your computer, and show you the new process of printing to the software, and just get you comfortable with the new software before we log off. As I mentioned, we don't need on-site technicians for this. We can do most of it remotely. However, if you do feel that you require a technician, not only to maybe service your machine, but to upgrade your software, you are more than welcome to just email us, support@troter.co.za, and we can arrange it from there. Also, regarding the interest in this software, if you are interested in buying the license for your machine, please email us your machine serial number and your company name, of course, for invoicing purposes, and we will arrange from our side regarding the license for your machine, and then of course arrange with you a date and time for the installation via TeamViewer or physical, whichever you choose. All right, guys, so that's all from my side. If you guys have any questions, I do think I've answered all of them that came in via the Q&A. If you do have any other questions, feel free to give us a call or just drop us a mail, and we can answer it from there. Hope you guys stay safe, all the best, and best of luck going forward. Just on that note, yes, the webinar will be available on our YouTube channel for download afterwards, and also for the customers that have missed the webinar. Thank you, Paul, for that question. All right, guys, have a good one. Stay safe, and best of luck going forward in this time.